Today we're doing the replacement of the flex disc, which is located, well, this is a front flex disc on the W140, but this procedure basically for most of Mercedes-Benz is from 80s and 90s. Now this is a front flex disc. To get to it you have to remove the support, which is held by 4 screws. Sorry, I already removed them. And there's 2 screws on the bottom that attach the transmission mount to this piece. So I just unscrew the 2 screws from here and 4 screws from the body and remove the plate. You're gonna see the transmission mount, which is held by 2 more screws to the plate of the transmission. Just remove these 2 pieces. Now, after removing the transmission mount, which is held by these 2 bolts, I believe that's the M1035. Now we can get to the flex disc. Now you must remember which position the disc is in and replace the new one for the old one in the same identical position. Do not reverse it. Also, the new flex disc is going to come with new bolts, so replace these. Of course, the best thing to do is just scrape all of this off. Make sure it's nice and clean when you're working on it. Also, make sure the transmission is supported by a jack, and slightly lift off the transmission mount to remove it. This will also relax the connection to the drive shaft, so it will be easier to remove. Since I'm replacing the flex disc, I'm also going to replace the transmission mount, since I'm taking it off anyway, even though it's good, but it is 20 years old, so why not just put a new one in. As you can see, we got some rust on the edges. It's all surface rust, but surface rust can get into actual rust. So we're going to use a steel wheel to clean it all off, prime it and paint it. Also, don't forget to clean off all the rest of the bolts to preserve them. This is the before and this is the after. Almost finished. Just have to clean a few more edges and just paint them with miracle paint for protection. And this is what it looks like after cleaning, repriming and repainting. So this will protect the plate and the bolts, so it'll be much easier to take it apart next time. Now, next thing what we have to do before removing the flex plate is marking of the position of a spindle on the transmission and the drive shaft. So this way, when we're replacing it, since we're going to be moving it, we need to know exactly how it's supposed to be lined up. Oh, sorry for that. So this way the balancing is going to be the same. Now, these are the 19mm bolts, and to do this you need to have the transmission in neutral so you can rotate the drive shaft as you unscrew the bolts. Now, what you also have to pay attention to is the way the bolts are set up. The washer, when you're connecting to this piece, the washer goes on the bolt on this side. When you're connecting on this side, the bolt is here, but the washer is by the nut. So you gotta pay attention when you do this. And here's the old and the new together. As you can see, there are some micro fractures here. There's a little rust around the rings, a little micro fractures here. So definitely needed to be changed now or later, so might as well do it now. And this is a brand new one. As you can see, it's also marked, so it goes in exactly the same way. And as you can see, made in Germany. You might always use original parts. Now position the new one exactly in the same position as the old one was, with all the lines lining up, making sure that the rings are seated inside. And now Tighten them up, put the new bolts in, do not reuse the old ones, and tighten them to the specs of your car. Well, here's the new one. Sorry about that. Here's the new flex disc. Now while you're down here, you might as well check the linkage bushings. When I check this one, as you can see, the bushing is basically completely deteriorated, so you have to order a new one and replace it by taking this pin out and putting the bushing in between, so then there's no metal on metal. But for now, the car is going to be out of commission. Here's a little more light. This is the transmission linkage connected to your gear shift to the transmission box. Make sure you check it, because a lot of them, when they get old, especially in the 20s, 25, 30 years old, they deteriorate because they are made out of plastic. Might as well change it. And we will be replacing the transmission mount, since we're taking the old one out anyway to replace this. So now we're going to replace the mount as well. Now that support has been cleaned, the bolts polished, they've been reinstalled and torqued to spec. There's two more here that go into the transmission support mount. Actually, it's the support for the support mount that supports the exhaust system. So don't forget to clean them off and torque them to the proper spec. And now we're going to install the transmission mount. Now here's the new transmission mount. We sprayed it with Marine 303 to get it lubricated, to preserve it. This is the old one. As you can see, cleaned off all the bolts, polished them up. Gonna put a little bit of Loctite on it to keep them nice and secure. Make sure you see the way it's slanted. Make sure you install it the same way. So not to go wrong, what I do is just I line them up here. This is the older one. As you can see, it's basically fine, but it is 20 years old, so it's not an expensive item. Just replace it. Now that the new mount is installed and torqued to the plate that we installed before under the flex plate, now we have to attach the support mount that connects it to the body right here. And of course we cleaned them up, making sure that everything's nice and clean. And now let me go get the support and install it. Just so don't forget to tighten these up. These are the M10s, so if I'm not mistaken, they're 40 Newton meters, and all the other ones are M8s. Those are 25s. Now it's time to install the body mount, freshly painted with cleaned up and painted bolts, new bolts for the connection to the transmission mount with new washers, and of course a little bit of Loctite. And so this is how it's gonna look once it's finished. As you can see, the bolts were all refinished, cleaned, because for some reason Mercedes discontinued these. Cleaned up the plate, primed and painted it. These two are also discontinued, but you can get them from any automotive store. These are regular M8 by 1.25 by 20 and perfect size. The only thing I did, I put O-ring, the bushing in between, so basically it's like a crush bushing to create a little bit more torque on it so they don't get loose. Plus I put a little bit of Loctite on it, and now this is the way it looks. We got new flex disc with new bolts, new transmission mount. All the bolts have been refinished, cleaned up, new bolts were installed. Now the only thing left to do is the, as you can see right there, a little rubber bushing that's supposed to be in there so this doesn't move like this, it stays tight. We're gonna water it, and then we're gonna show you how we're gonna change that.